Premier of Ontario is joining us right now. Premier, thank you so much for joining us. This new plan is expected to be the most aggressive move yet by a tariff-consumed American president. What is the mood there in Ontario and indeed the rest of Canada as we await this announcement later today?
Well, thanks so much for having me on. And I start every interview saying how Canadians love Americans. I love Americans. We love the U.S. But what this is going to do, it's going to hurt American families.
Imagine this moment for a second. A powerful motorcade moves slowly toward the Canadian border. Black SUVs, Secret Service agents scanning every direction, cameras ready. The President of the United States sitting inside, expecting the gates to open like they always do for world leaders. But instead, a border officer steps forward, checks the passport, looks directly at him and says something no U.S. president has ever been told before. "Sir, you can't enter Canada." Sounds impossible, right? Sounds like something from a political thriller movie. But under Canadian law, this shocking scenario is not just possible, it is legally justified. Because right now, according to Canada's immigration rules, Donald Trump can be classified as criminally inadmissible. That means the very same immigration law used to stop convicted criminals from entering the country could technically apply to the President of the United States. And if Canadian authorities decided to enforce that law strictly, Trump could be stopped at the border like any other foreign national with a criminal conviction. Let that sink in for a moment. A man who once commanded the most powerful office in the world could legally be told by a Canadian officer, "You are not allowed in." Now here's where the story becomes even more explosive. Canadian law does not make exceptions for powerful people. The rules are written in something called the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, the law that determines who can and cannot enter Canada. Inside that law is a section that deals with something known as criminal inadmissibility. And the rule is brutally simple. If a foreign national has been convicted of a serious crime that would also be considered serious under Canadian law, that person can be denied entry at the border, no matter who they are, no matter how famous or powerful they might be.
And the folks you had on just previous is 100% bang on. The lumber that homes are built, majority of it is coming from Canada. It's going to increase the cost of a house, the autos as well. We ship as many autos as we buy, but the cost of a pickup truck or an automobile is going to go up. And then the pharmaceuticals too that he's going to go after.
The law does not say except presidents. It does not say except billionaires. It simply says foreign nationals with certain criminal convictions can be refused entry. And under that definition, Trump now faces a very unusual situation. Because of his criminal conviction in New York for falsifying business records, legal experts in Canada have started asking a very uncomfortable question. If that crime were evaluated under Canadian criminal law, what would it be considered? And the answer many lawyers point to is fraud-related offenses, which in Canada can carry serious penalties. In fact, in major cases, fraud can carry prison sentences of up to 14 years. That places it firmly in the category of what Canadian law calls an indictable offense, the Canadian equivalent of a felony. And once a crime falls into that category, the immigration consequences become clear. A foreign national with that type of conviction can be labeled criminally inadmissible. This is where things start to get awkward politically. Because technically, if an ordinary person with the exact same conviction tried to cross the Canadian border, the process would be straightforward. The officer would check the criminal record, confirm the conviction, and refuse entry. It happens all the time. Tourists, business travelers, even celebrities have been denied entry to Canada because of past criminal convictions. The officers enforcing those rules are not making political decisions. Their job is simple: follow the law. But when the person involved is the President of the United States, everything suddenly becomes far more complicated. Diplomacy enters the picture, politics enters the picture, and governments start walking on a very delicate line. On one hand, Canada prides itself on being a country governed by the rule of law. The same law must apply to everyone. On the other hand, refusing entry to a sitting U.S. president would trigger one of the biggest diplomatic crises in modern history.
Explain a little bit more why you call it Termination Day.
Well, we're the #1 customer. We buy more goods off the U.S. than any country in the world, more than Japan, the U.K., and France combined. And if you go after Canada, we have no choice but retaliate. And I apologize to the American people. We shouldn't be doing this. And they were talking about cheese. Well, on the dairy products, in the last deal that President Trump made, the U.S.
So what happens in a situation like this? This is where Canadian law introduces something called a temporary resident permit. It's essentially a special waiver that allows someone who would normally be inadmissible to enter the country anyway. But here's the critical detail that changes everything. That permit is not automatic, it's discretionary. That means Canadian officials must decide whether the benefits of letting that person into the country outweigh the risks. In other words, the government has to make a judgment call, and that judgment could depend on politics, diplomacy, or the specific circumstances of the visit. But imagine the tension this creates. On one side, Trump has repeatedly criticized Canada's trade policies and even threatened heavy tariffs on Canadian goods. On the other side, Canada holds the legal power to say something extremely uncomfortable. You cannot enter this country without special permission. It creates a strange power dynamic between two allies that normally operate with complete trust and open cooperation. And that's why legal experts across Canada have been quietly discussing a scenario that once sounded unthinkable. What would actually happen if Donald Trump tried to cross the border without that special waiver? Because at that moment, the decision would no longer belong to politicians. It would belong to the frontline border officers whose job is to enforce Canadian law. And those officers would be placed in an extraordinary position, standing face to face with one of the most powerful political figures on the planet, while holding a law book that says convicted criminals can be turned away.